Hello everyone, and welcome to Anime Dreams. This is your go-to YouTube channel for anime fanfics, theories, and what-if adventures brought to life with passion and imagination. Today's topic: what if Naruko had her own ninja gadgets, tech inspired by Capsule Corp? Think scrolls meet sci-fi, kunai meets capsules. How would this change her ninja journey? Disclaimer: all content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's dive in and explore the possibilities. A blonde-haired girl, around 10 years old, sat quietly in her small, worn-down apartment. Her bright blue eyes were fixed on the unusual marking on her stomach, a seal she had discovered years ago while bathing in a nearby spring. Since that moment, young Naruko had been determined to uncover the truth behind it. Over the years, she used every bit of knowledge and resourcefulness she had to learn more. Just 2 days ago, she finally confirmed what it was: a sealing mark. This breakthrough came thanks to a kind and clever girl named Tenten, who had shown Naruko a scroll used to store her ninja tools. That demonstration had been the final clue Naruko needed. She now understood that the symbol on her stomach was a powerful seal, likely meant to contain something extraordinary. Curious and determined, Naruko had managed to quietly borrow a few scrolls and books on sealing techniques. Over the past couple of days, she had studied them intensely. To her surprise, sealing techniques came naturally to her. She could understand and recreate many of the seals described in the texts, even the complex ones. Yet, the one on her own body remained a mystery. With a sigh of frustration, she was about to pull her shirt back down when a memory surfaced, something a classmate had once said about meditation. The girl had mentioned that through meditation, one could connect with their inner world, what some called a mindscape. Naruko realized that if the seal was part of her, then perhaps meditation could help her understand it better. With renewed hope, Naruko sat cross-legged, took a deep breath, and began to meditate. Before long, she found herself in a strange, surreal place, her mindscape. It was unusual, a damp and shadowy space resembling a sewer. Naruko stood up and began exploring, her expression one of mild disgust and confusion. As she walked, she noticed 2 sets of pipes, one glowing with a gentle blue hue, like the energy of chakra, and another set that was a deep crimson, radiating a strange warmth and intensity. Intrigued by the red pipes, Naruko followed them, eventually arriving at a massive room. Inside, towering golden bars formed a colossal gate. Behind it, shadows danced, concealing something immense. But there, on the gate, it was. The seal. Naruko stepped closer, peering through the bars. At first, she saw nothing clearly. Then, 2 enormous eyes slowly opened, brilliant, slitted, and glowing red. A low, rumbling voice echoed from behind the gate. "So, my guest finally decides to visit," the voice said. Startled, Naruko took a step back. The light in the room brightened slightly, revealing the massive form of the Kyuubi, a majestic, ancient fox with 9 flowing tails. It gave a deep chuckle, more amused than threatening. "Yes, it's true. I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune," the creature said, its tone grand yet calm. "And you, little one, are my host." Naruko stared wide-eyed, her mind racing. Suddenly, many things made sense: the cold stares from the villagers, the isolation, even the strange kindness from the Hokage. She was a Jinchuriki, someone entrusted with the responsibility of holding a powerful being within her. The realization struck her hard. A wave of emotion washed over her, and despite her strength, Naruko found herself crying. Silent tears fell as years of confusion, loneliness, and longing surfaced all at once. Inside the cage, the Kyuubi watched her, not with malice, but with something akin to empathy. For once, the powerful fox didn't gloat or roar. Instead, it simply observed, its sharp gaze softened with a hint of understanding. It glanced at the seal, then narrowed its eyes. The Kyuubi didn't approve of this situation. It wasn't Naruko's fault, and it knew that. If it had the power to change things for her, it would. For now, though, all it could do was be there, silent but present, as the young girl began to understand the weight she carried, and the strength she would need to embrace it. Suddenly, it noticed something about the seal that hadn't stood out before. Rising to its feet and shifting into its human form, it approached the seal and examined it closely. Its eyes widened with realization. This seal hadn't been placed by the Shinigami, but by a Shinigami. That meant its old friend hadn't truly turned away from their bond. A sly, knowing smile crossed its face, the kind that could make even the most composed individuals uneasy. Turning toward the young girl resting nearby, it said, "Oi, little one, dry your tears. I'm about to make a very important deal." The girl looked up with wide, surprised eyes, her gaze meeting that of a woman with flowing crimson hair, porcelain skin, and an aura that seemed to shimmer with power and mystery. Despite her shock, the girl, Naruko, was captivated by the figure before her. Ignoring her expression, the woman touched the seal gently and called out, "Oi, Kira-chan, time to wake up. I have a proposition for you." She stepped back with a confident smile, knowing her message had been delivered. Moments later, a powerful presence filled the mindscape, nearly overwhelming Naruko with its intensity. Just as quickly, the pressure eased, and a regal figure emerged, a tall woman clad in a deep purple kimono. She stood at least 7 feet tall, her snowy white skin flawless, her hair wild and silver, her golden eyes full of curiosity. 2 ivory horns curled from her forehead, and a necklace of deep red beads hung gracefully from her neck. This elegant woman sat on the floor of the mindscape, calm and composed, and looked to the other with interest. "What is this proposition, Akane?" she asked. Akane smiled warmly. "It's good to see you again, Kira. But before I go into the details, I'd like you to see the young one's memories and what her life has been like." Kira turned toward Naruko, waving her hand. Images began to flow, memories, moments, and experiences that painted a picture of the girl's journey. As the visions played, Kira's calm expression turned serious, her energy rippling with emotion. She turned back. "Tell me your offer, Akane." Looking tenderly at Naruko, Akane spoke gently, "It's simple. I offer you the entirety of my life energy. In return, instead of it being tied to the seal that binds me, you will become the guardian of that energy, and in doing so, you'll ensure that this child's life improves." Dramatically, Kira considered her words, then turned to Naruko, walking toward her and gently lowering herself to eye level. "What is your name, little one?" Naruko, still wide-eyed and clearly overwhelmed, stammered, "And Naruko Uzumaki." Kira's expression softened into a kind smile. "Would you like a new mother?" Naruko's eyes grew even wider. "Someone wants to be my mother?" Kira laughed gently, but kindly. "Not quite in the way you're thinking, little one." Naruko's expression dimmed slightly. "So? Not adoption?" Kira reached out and touched Naruko's shoulder. "Let me explain. You won't be adopted in the traditional sense. Instead, you'll truly become the child of your new mother, with her strength flowing through your very being." Naruko's face lit up again. "Who will be my new mother?" Kira turned toward Akane, who stood waiting silently. "Your offer is accepted, Akane Yoko. You leave behind this world, and I will carry forward your power. With that, I welcome Naruko as my daughter." Akane closed her eyes, peace settling over her as she allowed her essence to fade. Kira inhaled deeply and turned back to Naruko, her golden eyes shining with warmth. She gently touched Naruko's forehead where the seal was marked and declared, "I, Kira Shinjin, the true goddess of transition, guardian of life and spirit, and founder of the Shinjin lineage, hereby declare you, Naruko Uzumaki, my daughter and heir. With the energy gifted by Akane Yoko and the favor of my sister, I now bless you with the heritage of the Shinjin clan, and the strength of both spirit and soul." Naruko felt a rush of energy surge through her. Turning her head slightly, she gasped. Emerging from her back was a long, strong tail, dark and furred. Kira smiled at her reaction, and kissed her gently on the forehead. "Welcome to the family, my little whirlwind. No longer will you be confined to that lonely apartment. No longer will you be underestimated or overlooked. You are Shinjin now, and with that comes strength, purpose, and belonging. Naruko felt a warmth bloom in her chest, comforted by Kira's kind words. Her eyes lit with determination. I promise, Okawa-sama. I will never let you down. I will grow strong. I will carry the Shinjin name with pride and make it known throughout the world. Kira chuckled softly. I believe in you, my child. And nothing you do will ever make me stop being proud of you. Now, when you awaken, head to Training Ground 43. You are now the rightful owner of it, and Grounds 42, 41, and 40 as well. A grand palace awaits you there, designed by your cousins. It is vast and beautiful, and contains everything you need, including a very special training chamber where time flows differently, allowing you to grow even faster. She leaned closer. I must go now to speak with your aunt. Remember, Naruko, you are a Shinjin. With that, Kira vanished, and Naruko's mindscape shifted into a serene moonlit valley. At its center stood a massive statue of a majestic, roaring creature, its long tail coiled powerfully around a massive stone. Naruko gazed at it with wonder. As she began to return to consciousness, she clenched her fist and smiled with fierce determination. I am Naruko Shinjin. And I am strong. Naruko awoke outside with a bright smile, feeling the gentle sway of her new tail behind her. Stretching out, she stood up and walked into what had once been her rather cramped bathroom. As she glanced into the mirror, her eyes widened in surprise. Her once short, spiky blonde hair had transformed, now flowing smoothly to her shoulders in silky black strands, matching the color of her tail. The familiar whisker-like marks on her cheeks were gone, leaving her face clear and soft. She leaned closer to examine two small horns beginning to grow from the center of her forehead. A warm smile spread across her face, they reminded her of her new mother figure. While her eyes weren't golden like hers, Naruko was content. The horns were more than enough to feel a connection. Remembering the instructions she'd been given, Naruko gently shook her head and stepped out of the bathroom. Turning to the items she had gathered earlier, she carefully picked them up. Seals were fascinating to her, and she already saw the possibilities they held. Sliding on a simple black shirt, she paused before reaching for her usual orange and blue jacket. It felt a little too bright for her now. She had only chosen it before because it kept her warm during colder months. She had originally wanted the fur-lined one, but the price had been far too high for her budget at the time. With a soft chuckle, she turned away and exited the apartment building, heading straight for the training grounds. As she walked, she passed various grounds, noting their numbers until she reached Training Ground 40. It had a calm atmosphere and a river running through it that caught her attention. Nodding in appreciation, she moved on. Training Ground 41 was just as appealing, secluded, with a serene pond that appeared to be connected to the river she had just seen. The possibility of catching fresh fish there was a bonus. She nodded again in approval before continuing her exploration. At Training Ground 42, she blinked in surprise upon seeing a group of wolves gathered near a plump deer. She quietly made a mental note of it and moved on. Finally, she arrived at Training Ground 43. A brick fence and large iron gate greeted her, with the kanji for Shinjin gleaming brightly at the entrance. Curiously, she placed a hand on the gate, which responded by pulsing with a gentle glow before slowly swinging open. Stepping inside, Naruko gasped in amazement. In front of her stood a stunning home, reminiscent of the grand castles she had once heard about in stories, yet with a modern flair. Massive statues of noble apes stood at the entrance, each proudly bearing the symbol of Shinjin. She walked inside, eyes wide with wonder, still trying to believe that this place now belonged to her. With a grin, she set off to explore every corner of her new home, eager to find the perfect room to make her own. 2 hours passed before Naruko settled on her new bedroom, the largest in the entire house. It connected to a luxurious bathroom, complete with a walk-in shower and a cozy jacuzzi. After unpacking the scrolls and books she had collected, she wandered into the kitchen and was delighted to find the refrigerator fully stocked. The freezer held a variety of meats, each sealed and labeled with preservation tags. She also discovered the cabinets filled with cooking utensils and ingredients. She decided to make a simple dinner, fried fish and fries, a comforting meal that warmed her heart. With her stomach full and her energy fading, she made her way back to her new room. Climbing into bed, she pulled the covers over herself and turned off the light, quickly drifting into peaceful sleep. What she didn't realize was that a new day had already begun. Her long meditation had transitioned into a quiet evening of discovery. Back at her old apartment, a few Anbu members stood silently, accompanied by Iruka Umino. One of the Anbu picked up the orange jacket Naruko had left behind and turned to Iruka. "There's no sign of her here, Umino-san," the Anbu said gently. "Only her jacket remains." Iruka let out a gentle sigh. "All right, I'll just wait for her at the academy. Hopefully, she shows up before lunch." He turned and walked back toward the academy with steady steps. Meanwhile, an Anbu, an elegant woman with long, wavy purple hair, spoke calmly, "You three, report back to Hokage-sama. I'll continue looking for any clues about her location." The other three Anbu nodded and disappeared in the traditional Leaf Village sunshine technique. Once they were gone, she straightened up and began carefully searching the apartment for any sign of Naruko aside from her jacket, which was still there. After about 45 minutes, she had found nothing new. Letting out a soft breath, she looked down at the jacket in her hand. Sending out a brief pulse of chakra to ensure she was alone, she gently removed her mask and brought the jacket closer, holding it to her face with a fond expression. "I hope you're all right, Naruko-chan," she whispered kindly. "And I truly hope no one has treated you unfairly." She stopped herself from saying anything further, slid her mask back into place, and disappeared in a graceful swirl of leaves. Later that night, Naruko woke up feeling refreshed and full of energy. She stretched, then hopped out of bed with a cheerful smile. "What should I do today?" she wondered. Then she remembered something that always weighed on her, how her classmates often underestimated her. Determined to grow, she made her way to the new library she'd discovered. Inside, she picked up the first book she saw. The title read, "The Different Types of Energies and How to Use Them." Book 1, for Beginners. Settling into a comfortable chair, she began to read. Before long, she had made it through half the library. She was already on her 5th book about energy types and had also read several cookbooks, general education texts, and even a guide on creating new jutsu. After a while, she gently closed her book and stretched. "Okay, I've exercised my brain enough for today. Time to train my body." Jumping down from the chair with enthusiasm, she made her way to the hyperbolic time chamber. Upon arriving at the entrance, she moved the dragon sculpture's face to reveal the control panel. Thinking back to what she read in the chamber's manual, she said thoughtfully, "I've been reading for about 7 hours, so I should train my body for the same amount of time. Since time moves differently in here, 7 hours inside equals about 14 hours of real time. So I'll set it to 4 hours in real time to get the right balance." She nodded, pleased with her math, and set the timer. The dragon's eyes lit up, accepting her input. The door opened with a quiet hum, and Naruko stepped inside. As the door closed and faded behind her, she cracked her knuckles with a confident smile. "All right, let's get serious. First up, that clone technique I saw that man practicing, what was it again?" "Oh, right. Shadow Clone Jutsu." She crossed her fingers and called out, "Shadow Clone Jutsu." A puff of smoke filled the room, and Naruko had to wave it away. When it cleared, she gasped in awe at the sight of a sea of clones surrounding her. Shaking her head in amazement, she smiled brightly. "Yes. I pulled it off on the first try." Taking a deep breath, she calmed herself. "All right, now let's start working on those different energies we read about. Divide into groups, each of you take one to study and practice. And some of you, see if you can help figure out how to reduce the physical discomfort when we access the tail's energy." The clones responded with cheerful determination, "You got it, boss." Soon, the training chamber was filled with numerous clones of Naruko. The original Naruko was diligently performing push-ups and sit-ups, focused on improving her physical strength. She no longer wanted to feel small or unprepared, she aspired to become confident and powerful, someone others could admire and rely on. It wasn't just about personal growth, she also wanted to challenge herself and maybe even surpass Sasuke, which added a bit of fun motivation to her efforts. Naruko continued this intense training routine for a full week, causing some concern among those in the village who noticed her absence. Some villagers even hesitated to go about their day, thinking she might be planning one of her legendary pranks. But in truth, Naruko had simply committed herself to a period of personal development. One bright morning, Naruko woke up and stretched with a yawn. It was the day she would return to the academy. Making her way to the bathroom, she glanced at her reflection in the mirror. A smile spread across her face as she noticed the progress she had made, her form was stronger, and she looked healthier than before. Proudly, she lifted her left arm and gave a small flex, noticing the toned muscles that had begun to develop. Satisfied, she stepped into the shower and enjoyed the warm water, letting it relax her body after days of hard work. Afterward, she stood at the sink and brushed her teeth, followed by carefully brushing and combing her hair. Her hair always had a tendency to curl after a shower, so she made sure it was neat and styled. She also gently brushed her tail, preferring it smooth and well-kept rather than fluffy and tangled. Leaving the bathroom, Naruko walked over to her dresser, picked out a pair of black undergarments, and got dressed for the day. She tossed her towel into the hamper and began preparing to face whatever challenges the academy might bring, with confidence, strength, and a bright spirit. She walked over to her closet, gently opened the doors, and pondered what to wear for the day. Apparently, while she had been asleep on the first night, her mother had arranged for a wide variety of clothes to be delivered and neatly organized in the closet. Among them were several versions of the traditional Saiyan armor. Up to this point, Naruko had been training in a simple black outfit, lightweight pants with specialized gravity and resistance seals, paired with matching wristbands that had similar enhancements. In fact, nearly all her outfits were equipped with these seals, each calibrated to the level of resistance she was most accustomed to. Scratching the back of her head, she smiled thoughtfully. "I think I'll go classic today." Just as she was about to reach for a pair of deep orange pants, her gaze landed on a set of Saiyan warrior armor, specifically the kind worn by Bardock. Her smile widened, and she changed her mind. She picked out the upper armor piece along with the arm guards. After that, she slid into a pair of long black pants, added the leg guards, and then slipped on her red socks and black boots. Admiring her reflection in the mirror, she felt pleased but sensed something was missing. Then it clicked. She walked over to her dresser, opened the top drawer, and retrieved a sleek pair of shades. These weren't ordinary sunglasses, they were specially crafted with integrated Saiyan technology, inspired by the classic Scouters. Not only did they add to her cool appearance, but they also allowed her to analyze power levels and detect approaching individuals with ease. Unlike the older models, these updated Scouter shades wouldn't malfunction from unexpected power surges. Instead, they would smoothly download updates and adapt. Plus, they were designed to function only for Naruko. On anyone else, they'd work like regular sunglasses. Now fully dressed and confident, her tail swaying gently behind her, Naruko picked up a book titled The History of the Saiyan Race. For the first time in days, she stepped outside her home. As she left the compound, the gate silently closed behind her, and the entire residence faded from sight, hidden by a clever camouflage seal. With one hand tucked into her pocket, she spoke softly to herself. Goku and Vegeta, two of the strongest Saiyans known for reaching incredible heights like Super Saiyan 4 and Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan. Smirking behind her book, Naruko added with determination, "One day, I'll surpass you both and become a new symbol of Saiyan strength. After all, I am the new princess of the Saiyans." With her goal clear and her heart full of purpose, she continued her walk toward the academy. At the academy in classroom 300, Iruka had just stepped inside and let out a soft sigh. Once again, Sasuke Uchiha's fan club was engaged in a lively debate over who would get the coveted seat next to the quiet and mysterious student. As Iruka surveyed the room, a look of concern crossed his face. Naruko still hadn't returned to class, and that was unusual. Just as he was about to call for order and ask everyone to settle down, the classroom door slid open with a gentle swish. Every head turned toward the entrance, eyes widening in surprise as a transformed Naruko calmly stepped into the room. Iruka, blinking in confusion, tilted his head and asked, "Excuse me, are you lost?" Naruko, half hidden behind a book, lowered it and met Iruka's gaze directly. A collective gasp rippled through the class. Even Sarutobi, who had been quietly observing from afar, reacted with surprise upon recognizing those unmistakable blue eyes. Naruko gave a sheepish smile and scratched the back of her head. "Sorry I'm late. On my way here, I ran into the most unexpected thing, a talking squirrel. But it wasn't really a squirrel. She was actually a princess who had been enchanted by a mischievous old sorceress. She asked for my help to save her kingdom from a tricky dragon that the sorceress had under her spell." She continued, animatedly waving her hands. "Of course, being the helpful person I am, I agreed. I raced to the kingdom and found out that the dragon had 5 heads and could breathe all kinds of colorful mist. I grabbed a shining sword from the castle armory and worked hard to calm the dragon down. Once the dragon was settled, the sorceress appeared and tried to cast another spell on me. But," Naruko added with a proud grin, "I used a shiny mirror nearby to reflect the magic, and it ended up reversing the spell on the princess instead. She turned back into her real self and was so happy she made me a royal knight. Then she gave me the most amazing horse ever. His name is Quicksilver. I rode Quicksilver all the way here, but I sent him home before coming into class." She gave a playful shrug. "And that's why I'm late." Iruka blinked again, unsure whether to be impressed or bewildered, but one thing was for certain: Naruko had certainly made an entrance. Every male in the room, including Kakashi who had just returned from a mission, either side or, in Kakashi's case, nodded thoughtfully. The girls, on the other hand, were completely captivated by the tale and found themselves wishing they could be a princess protected by a hero like Naruko. Iruka, shaking his head with a mix of amusement and curiosity, asked, "Where have you been for the past week, Naruko?" Naruko replied with a dramatic flair, "Well, it all started when I was resting in what used to be my apartment. Suddenly, this energetic person in a fox costume came crashing through my window. I was startled awake and ready to defend myself, but then she hid under my bed and pleaded with me not to let it catch her. Curious, I asked her what she was running from. She told me that a man in white robes with golden hair was trying to trap her in a tiny, magical prison for the rest of her life. I asked her why he would do something like that, and she explained that she had already been confined twice before, and the people in charge were really unkind. So when she finally got out, she was determined never to go back. But then, another person, this one using some kind of mind control, forced her to return and cause trouble at one of her old prisons." Naruko continued, "That's when the man in white appeared and used a powerful enchanted fork to try to capture her again. After hearing her story, I felt really sorry for her, so I promised I'd protect her no matter what. But just then, the man in white told me something wild, that he was my father and that the fox woman was actually a tricky creature trying to fool me so she could take over the world. As I tried to figure out who was telling the truth, another person appeared. A woman I'll call Shinjin. She walked into my room, gently took the fox woman away, saying only she could help with creatures like that. Then she also took the man in white with her. Before she left, she looked at me, smiled, and gave me a kiss on the forehead. Then she told me I was now her child and gave me this amazing new place to live, oh, and a tail. After that, she gave me directions to my new home and left to speak with her sister. I've been living at my new place ever since. Oh, and by the way, the woman in the costume was named Kyubi, and the man in white was called Arashi." Everyone was silent, eyes wide with disbelief. Sarutobi and Kakashi were so pale, they could have passed for ghosts. Naruko, unbothered by the stunned reactions, calmly made her way over and took a seat beside Shino. Iruka, after regaining his composure, cleared his throat and focused back on the classroom. "All right then, let's begin." An hour later, the students were outside, ready for sparring practice. Iruka now had help from his assistant, Mizuki. Naruko immediately sensed something odd about Mizuki, as if he held a grudge or had something to hide. Iruka addressed the class with a grin, "Today we're going to do something a little different. You get to pick your opponent." Excited whispers filled the air. Most students were thrilled by the idea, except for Naruko, who had a feeling someone was going to try and challenge her to prove a point. Sure enough, when Iruka asked who wanted to go first, Sasuke stepped forward confidently and said, "I'll go first. I challenge Naruko." Naruko let out a soft sigh and stood. "All right," she said calmly. "Let's just keep it friendly, okay? I'll do my best." Naruko calmly walked into the center of the training ring, paying no mind to the excited chatter of Sasuke's fan club on the sidelines. She stood still, her mind focused on which fighting style to use. Sasuke was already in his stance, a confident smirk on his face as he assumed Naruko was too nervous to even prepare. Standing between them, Mizuki glanced at both young ninja before calling out, "Begin." Sasuke dashed forward, assuming Naruko's stillness meant hesitation. But as he neared, her eyes sharpened and she gracefully sidestepped, her movements fluid and precise. With a swift flick of her tail, similar to a technique she had seen before, Sasuke was suddenly sent flying through the air, tumbling past several trees. The crowd gasped, none of them having seen her move. Naruko blinked in surprise, glancing at her tail with curiosity. Was it really that powerful? Or maybe Sasuke underestimated her too much? She wondered. Sasuke stumbled back to the ring, his steps uneven. Narrowing his eyes at Naruko, he said defiantly, "That was just luck. This time, I'll show you my true speed." He dashed again, but to Naruko, his movements still appeared slow and predictable. With a soft sigh, she decided on her approach. Just as Sasuke reached her, Naruko disappeared in a blur, reappearing behind him and gently knocking him forward with a controlled elbow strike. As he turned in surprise, she followed up with a light punch to the face, then a tap to his midsection that caused him to kneel, winded. Sasuke tried to recover, but Naruko was already spinning upward, creating a gust of wind that pulled him into the air. With a cry, she called out, "Taijutsu, Tatsumaki Senpukyaku." Her technique created a whirlwind of controlled kicks, each delivered with care and precision. Sasuke landed gently in front of his stunned fan club, dazed but unharmed. Naruko landed softly, arms crossed as she calmly said, "Confidence is good, Sasuke, but don't let it blind you. True strength comes from purpose, not pride." With that, she turned and walked away, hands resting behind her head as Iruka, still wide-eyed, declared her the winner. Later that afternoon, Naruko was walking toward her favorite ramen stand, reading one of her favorite books as she went. Just as she approached, she found herself surrounded. Looking up, she noticed a group of classmates and their parents, most from Sasuke's fan club. Ino was notably absent. She calmly closed her book and asked, "Is there something I can help you with?" Sakura stepped forward, pointing accusingly. "You cheated, I know it." Naruko blinked, clearly unimpressed. "Please go home, you're making a scene." Frustrated, Sakura attempted to strike Naruko, but Naruko gently caught her hand and softly redirected her away toward her family. Her expression became serious, and she said firmly, "I won't tolerate unkindness. Please be respectful, or walk away." Just then, one of the adults stepped forward in anger, holding a dull kunai. Naruko took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and when she reopened them, she had already disarmed the adult and returned to her spot in a blink, calm and composed. The crowd, stunned by her swift movements, backed away quickly, not daring to continue. Only Sakura and her parents remained, who took the message seriously and quickly left the scene. Naruko glanced at those still standing and softly said, "Let's all treat each other better." With the situation diffused, she resumed her walk to Ichiraku Ramen. Upon arriving, she sat down and started enjoying bowl after bowl of ramen, her book still open in front of her. Ayame and Tucci watched in amazement, recognizing her ability to eat and read at the same time, an impressive feat that reminded them of Kakashi's multitasking habits. Without looking up, Naruko shifted her eyes to the side and asked politely, "Is there something you need, Anbu-san?" The Anbu agent wearing a cat-like mask appeared suddenly and spoke calmly, "Hokage-sama and the council have requested your presence." Upon hearing this, Naruko closed her book with quiet finality and placed a generous amount of money on the counter. Rising from her seat, she didn't pay much attention to Tucci, who seemed momentarily surprised by her generosity. She simply replied, "Understood." Yugao, upon seeing Naruko's composed and confident expression, was silently grateful for the mask covering her face. It helped her maintain her professionalism. She gently placed a hand on Naruko's shoulder, and the two disappeared in a swift movement typical of the Leaf Village's body flicker technique. Moments later, Naruko found herself in one of her least favorite places, a council meeting. She sat quietly, her chin resting in her hand, clearly unamused. Her eyes scanned the room lazily, and the soft swaying of her fox-like tail hinted at her boredom. The civilian council members looked at her with visible discomfort, the shinobi council observed her with uncertainty, and the elder council maintained their usual unreadable expressions. Naruko, unfazed by the attention, finally broke the silence. Looking directly at the Hokage, she asked in a calm yet clearly uninterested voice, "Are we just going to sit here and look at each other, or is there something we need to discuss?" Hiruzen Sarutobi blinked at her candidness, coughed lightly, and replied, "Yes, there is indeed a matter we need to address." A civilian council member then stood, his expression stern. "Hokage-sama," he said, "this young girl caused a disturbance in the village and several citizens were taken to the medical ward because of it." Naruko looked at the man and said, "Actually, I only blocked the chakra flowing through their bodies and filled their chakra pathways with ki. They'll never make it as Jinan now, and those foolish enough to try will be unable to use jutsu at all. Also, I'm not a demon, as the Kyubi no Kitsune no longer resides within me." "Thank you very much." All eyes in the room widened in shock as Hayashi Hyuga asked, "How do you know about your prisoner?" Naruko glanced at the man with a hint of boredom in her eyes and replied, "I'm much smarter than you think. I discovered the seal on my stomach one day while cleaning myself in a river, and I set out to understand it. Thanks to Tenten Higurashi and Ino Yamanaka, I learned the truth. Tenten showed me her weapon scroll, which helped me identify the seal, and I remembered Ino mentioning that meditation was a key part of her family's jutsu." Everyone in the room stared in awe, and Hiruzen asked, "What do you mean the Kyubi no longer resides inside of you?" Naruko stood up, removed her top, and channeled chakra through her body. No seal appeared, leaving everyone stunned. After putting her gear back on, she said, "Exactly what I said, the Kyubi no Kitsune no longer resides inside of me. She was removed by a higher power. I believe you heard the story I told Iruka earlier, Hokage-sama. That was almost exactly how it happened, except I gave Minato Namikaze a lesson in humility before sending him on his way." The room was completely silent, and some people were in disbelief. Sarutobi, trembling, asked, "Who is Shinjin?" Naruko closed her eyes and replied, "It's a last name, my new last name, to be exact, and also my new clan." One of the civilians stood up and asked, "Who is Shinjin, then?" Naruko, still with her eyes closed, said, "For the last time, I am not a demon. A Shinigami, maybe. A Saiyan, definitely. But not a demon. To answer your question, Shinjin is, once again, my new last name, my new clan. This clan is ancient, as old as time itself. The senior members are as old as time itself, but it's best not to say such things to their face unless you want to experience something unpleasant." The room went quiet, and everyone began to ponder if they had ever encountered the name Shinjin before. Suddenly, Sarutobi remembered a story his sensei, Hashirama, had told him about Kami and Shinigami, life and death themselves, as old as time itself. They were sisters, deeply connected, and part of the eldest clan in history, predating even the Sage of Six Paths. He quickly tried to recall the name of this clan. Just then, Sume Inuzuka snapped her fingers, drawing everyone's attention to her. She said, "I remember where I've heard that name before. My team once encountered a Shinjin. She defeated all three of us while her eyes were closed, and she spared our lives, mentioning something about the clan named Shinjin and that Kasama was calling her. We passed out, and when we woke up, she was gone. The area around us was covered in white feathers and snow. Naruko cracked open her left eye and said, "Your team must have encountered my cousin, Michelle. You're lucky she was called back by my aunt, otherwise, you might not have made it." All eyes widened as they heard this, and Sarutobi suddenly remembered more of the story. Kemi apparently had 4 daughters: Michelle, Gabriella, Rachel, and Lucifer. All 4 girls were the angels of Kami and considered omens. Kami was named Akiko Shinjin, while Shinigami was named Akira Shinjin. However, Kami preferred to be called Aki, and Shinigami went by Kira. Sarutobi suddenly became pale as one of these 2 powerful beings had declared Naruko as their child, which could mean significant complications for Jiraiya's plans. Everyone, except for Naruko, noticed how pale Sarutobi had turned and asked, "What's wrong, Hokage-sama?" Sarutobi, with fear clearly in his eyes, asked, "Which one?" Naruko, slowly opening her eyes, smirked and said, "Fear me, for I am destined for greatness." Sarutobi was taken aback upon hearing Naruko's words, as it meant she had been transformed into the child of Kira Shinjin, now the daughter of death itself. Naruko, noticing the sheer fear on Sarutobi's face, calmly said, "I'll allow you to inform everyone else in the room of what you've learned, as I have an important meeting in a special training room." With that, she stood up and, to the astonishment of everyone, vanished with a whisper of wind. All eyes turned to the still shaking Sarutobi, who slowly informed the council of his discovery. The room filled with shocked whispers as people realized that Naruko was the daughter of the goddess of death. Naruko arrived at her home but didn't head directly to the chamber, as she sensed 5 unfamiliar energy signatures, along with her mother's presence. Instead, she made her way to the couch, lying down and staring up at the ceiling. She didn't even flinch when she was gently lifted into the air, with Kira taking a seat beside her. Slowly, Naruko was lowered, her head resting comfortably in her mother's lap. As she glanced around, she saw what appeared to be Rachel, Michelle, Gabriella, and Lucifer. Aki was still exploring the kitchen. Naruko then turned her eyes toward her mother and asked, "Is this a family meeting?" Kira, smiling down at her daughter, ran her fingers through Naruko's hair and replied, "Yes, my little prince of all scions. Your aunt and cousins wanted to meet you." Naruko nodded, allowing her tail to unwrap from around her waist. With a small yawn, she added, "I'm feeling a bit sleepy, Oka-chan. I think I'll take a nap until Aunt Aki finishes exploring." Kira's smile brightened even more, and she gently responded, "Good night, my precious maelstrom." With that, Naruko drifted into a peaceful sleep, her head resting in Kira's lap. 2 years later. 2 years had passed, and now Naruko was 12 years old. Her black hair had remained the same ever since she had fully embraced her Saiyan heritage. Her demeanor was mostly indifferent to everyone, except for Ayame, Tuchi, and Sasuke, to whom she showed a clear dislike. After the council had recovered from the initial shock, they had informed the village of who Naruko truly was, how she had bravely carried the burden of the Kyuubi for so long and had finally sealed it away, which was the reason for her absence from the academy. They also shared that she was the daughter of Minato Namikaze, heir to the Namikaze clan. Upon hearing this, the villagers started to show her a great deal of respect, eager to make amends for their past actions. However, Naruko wasn't interested in their praise or apologies. She had grown indifferent to the opinions of others, no longer caring whether they hated or admired her. Naruko was proud of who she was, a proud Saiyan, and she had no time for the superficial kindness of others. This newfound attitude also contributed to her strained relationship with Sasuke, who, in his arrogance, had requested to be a member of her clan. Naruko had made it clear she would never allow that, and after their confrontation, Sasuke had spent several weeks recovering. Jiraiya, one of the village's most respected figures, had visited Naruko in an attempt to convince her that she was meant to be Konoha's greatest protector. Naruko, however, firmly disagreed with that idea. She made it known that she had no interest in defending Konoha unless it was to protect those she truly cared about, like Ayame and Tucci. Everyone else, as far as she was concerned, could handle their own problems. This defiance had not gone over well with Jiraiya, who tried to convince her through force. However, he quickly learned that it was not a good idea to challenge Naruko. After a brief but intense exchange, he was left with a much-needed lesson in humility. Today was a significant day for Naruko. It was her last day at the academy, and the day of the Genin exams. Naruko had no doubt she would pass with flying colors. Her classmates, who once saw her as the class clown, now regarded her as the Rookie of the Year. Naruko had never cared for titles, but she had worked hard to prove her abilities and improve her skills. She had done it for herself, not for the approval of others. As Naruko prepared for the day, she slipped into a black shirt, put on her wristbands, and readied herself for the exam. Before leaving, she whistled loudly. This was the signal for her special birthday present from her cousin Michelle. In response, a large black panther, named Ashley, bounded into the room. What had once started as a small, playful panther kitten had grown into a powerful and loyal companion over the past 2 years. With a smile, Naruko said, "Come on, Ashley. Today's the day." Ashley nodded as Naruko allowed her to put on the armor. Although Naruko didn't necessarily need it, as she had trained extensively with Ashley in the chamber and could easily handle threats of Jonin-level strength, the armor was meant for added protection. Once she was dressed in the armor, Naruko strapped her new sword across her back. It was a gift from Gabriella, who had apologized for the delay in its arrival. Gabriella had tracked it down personally, and it was a legendary weapon, known by many names, though Naruko preferred to call it Excalibur, the Sword of Kings. Naruko had already spent 2 days training with it in the chamber, using the Shadow Clone Jutsu to gain an immense amount of experience with the weapon, allowing her to wield it as if she had already mastered it. Each time she created clones, she would summon at least 10,000, and she had no issues with the mental strain, thanks to her training with Rachel, which had strengthened her mind significantly. Naruko had become so mentally resilient that even the harshest forms of torture couldn't break her spirit. Should anyone try to infiltrate her mind, they would find themselves trapped in an endless maze of her design. Not long ago, Naruko had been vulnerable to genjutsu, but her cousin Lucifer had helped her overcome that weakness. The tattoo of a large slitted eye on her right hand was her connection to Argus, a powerful demon who protected her from all illusions. As Naruko walked out of her home, Ashley proudly followed beside her. The villagers couldn't help but stare, some of them with a hint of fear in their eyes. Naruko didn't mind, knowing that Ashley had once fiercely defended her against those who had tried to harm her. Shaking her head with a small chuckle, she stopped and said, "Come on, Ashley, let's take to the skies." Ashley responded with a joyful roar, leaping into the air and soaring lazily toward the academy. Naruko laughed, teasing, "Lazy panther, you were waiting for me to say that." With that, she took to the skies as well, following Ashley at a leisurely pace. At the academy, Iruka stood observing his students. He could see the potential in many of them. Sasuke Uchiha, while talented, needed to stop provoking Naruko. Ino Yamanaka had become as reserved and composed as Naruko herself and was excelling in the class. Shikamaru Nara was lazy but brilliant. Kiba Inuzuka, if he could rein in his arrogance, had great potential. Huji Akamiki, alongside Shikamaru, would make a strong team. Shino Aburame was another sure candidate for success. Hinata Hyuga, though skilled, had to overcome her insecurities, and Sakura Haruno would need to shed her fangirl persona to achieve greatness. Iruka's attention turned to the clock as he anticipated the arrival of one particular student. The door opened, and in walked Naruko Shinjin, also known as Lord Shinjin, accompanied by her pet panther, Ashley the Terrible. The villagers had taken to calling Naruko Lord Shinjin after she had rejected the Namikaze surname and reminded them that she was a member of the prestigious Shinjin clan, being the only female in the clan and the princess of all scions. Naruko held her position at the top of the class with absolute confidence. She effortlessly defeated anyone who challenged her for her spot, though she preferred to do so without causing unnecessary harm. Iruka couldn't help but recall the last time Naruko had faced off with Sasuke, almost breaking every bone in his arm with a swift, precise strike of her tail. Naruko had grown so powerful that she rarely needed to use her hands or feet anymore, as her tail was an incredibly formidable weapon. Iruka had witnessed her use it to defeat a group of Chunin who had threatened Ayame Ichiraku, sending them flying through buildings with little effort. The consequences had been severe, and while Naruko didn't express regret, she had simply stated that she was defending what was hers and would do so again without hesitation. Taking her seat beside Ino, Naruko looked at the class with quiet authority. Iruka cleared his throat and said, "All right, everyone. Today is the day of your Jinan exams. Remember to give it your all, and you'll do just fine." He nodded to Mizuki, and together they began the Jinan exams. Later, Naruko was seen walking down the street, her brand new Konoha headband shining brightly on her left arm. Naruko had easily passed the exam and had smiled at Mizuki's unsuccessful attempt to trick her into failing. After completing the exams, Naruko had told Ashley to go find something to eat, as she could tell Ashley was hungry and she didn't feel like preparing a big meal. Naruko still couldn't fully understand how Ashley could convince her to make something to eat when she rarely ate herself. She had been surprised when she discovered this about herself, since, according to the books she had read about Goku and other scions, she was supposed to have a huge appetite. Thankfully, Rachel had been able to explain it to her. Apparently, because of the unique energy flowing through her, her metabolism was much more efficient than the other scions or even humans. That didn't mean she never ate, it was just that when she did, it was only a little at a time. Naruko's mother had explained to her that she would grow out of certain phases, especially when she reached a milestone known as Super Saiyan. Naruko had no doubts about this, as her mother had always been right before. She frowned, recalling her mother's warning about gazing at the full moon without proper control over her body. Naruko had ignored the advice and, as a result, had transformed into a giant ape, nearly breaking through the barrier surrounding the compound. Thankfully, she had regained control and reversed the transformation. Naruko disliked this form intensely and wondered if she was the only one who did. Naruko paused in front of the ramen stand, a smirk crossing her face as she realized she could really go for some food. Entering the shop, she sat down in her usual chair, thinking about how long it would take Ayame to spot her. It didn't take long. Ayame appeared in front of her, sporting a cute smile. Batting her eyelashes, Ayame asked, "What can I do for you, Naruko-chan?" Chuckling, Naruko replied, "I'll have 6 bowls of chicken ramen." Just then, sensing an energy signature approaching, Naruko added, "And Ashley will take the finest piece of meat you have." Ayame blinked, confused, until Ashley walked in, looking rather upset. Realization dawned on Ayame, and she giggled, replying, "Coming right up, Naruko-chan." Naruko turned to Ashley and asked, "So, no luck catching that golden rabbit?" Ashley shook her head and yawned, revealing her sharp teeth. Naruko laughed loudly, teasing, "Am I supposed to be afraid?" Ashley growled, snorted, and glared at something in the distance. Naruko continued laughing, saying, "Silly panther, I'm the princess of all scions, and I'm afraid of nothing." Ashley snorted just as Ayame appeared with a thick slice of steak. She placed it in front of Ashley and patted the panther on the head, saying, "Don't worry, girl. You'll catch that tricky rabbit next time." Ashley purred as she began to eat the steak. Naruko, calming her laughter, said, "She's right, Ashley. You're my pet, and no pesky rabbit is going to escape your hungry paws." Ashley gave a snort of agreement, still munching on the steak. Hours later, Naruko was sitting in a tree in a quiet clearing at night, listening to an absurd conversation between Sasuke and Mizuki. Apparently, the reckless Uchiha had stolen the forbidden scroll of sealing and was about to hand it over to Mizuki, who thought he had the power to defeat Sasuke. Naruko almost laughed out loud but decided against it, though Ashley, beside her, found the situation hilarious. Mizuki didn't even have the power to defeat Ashley, and she was the laziest panther around. Naruko shifted her attention as Iruka appeared, trying to stop Sasuke from committing a serious mistake, but he was easily defeated by Mizuki. This made Naruko raise an eyebrow. Mizuki then revealed that he was working for the treacherous Orochimaru, someone Naruko's mother and aunt both wanted gone. Orochimaru, it seemed, had discovered a way to cheat death and extend his life. Naruko glanced at Ashley and asked, "What do you think, girl?" Ashley's only response was a lick of her lips. Naruko chuckled, saying, "You really let your stomach lead the way." Standing up, Naruko jumped down, alerting everyone in the clearing to her presence. Mizuki laughed, saying, "Speak of the demon." Naruko raised an eyebrow and asked, "Didn't you get the memo? I'm not a demon." Mizuki sneered, replying, "You are a demon, you stupid fox." Naruko rolled her eyes and called out, "Ashley, retrieve the scroll from this traitor." Mizuki was trying to understand what Naruko was talking about when suddenly, he felt the scroll being taken away from him. His eyes widened in surprise as he turned to see Ashley, who had the scroll beneath one of her paws, gazing at him with a playful smirk. Mizuki then shifted his attention from Naruko to Sasuke, smirking as he said, "Observe the strength it takes to challenge this opponent." With that, Mizuki disappeared from sight, leaving everyone confused, except for Naruko, who could still track his movements. She noticed that he was moving faster than most, though still not quite fast enough to elude her. Naruko calmly stepped to the left, lifted her left hand, and pressed it against Mizuki's chest. Mizuki staggered back, clearly winded, and wondered how Naruko had been able to keep up with him. Ignoring the marks left on her hand, Naruko infused a little wind chakra into her palm and pushed Mizuki further away. Shaking his head, Mizuki growled, "Your tricks won't work on me again, Naruko." He then tore off his shirt to reveal something that caused Naruko to narrow her eyes. In the center of Mizuki's chest was a seal, one clearly created by Orochimaru. Naruko's gaze hardened as she quickly recognized the nature of the seal, which forced its user to draw on ki. Mizuki, laughing, declared, "Witness the power granted to me by Orochimaru-sama. The strength to stand against and defeat you." Naruko activated the seal, and her eyes widened when she saw Mizuki's power surge, reaching an alarming level beyond 9,000. Before Naruko could react, Mizuki vanished and landed a heavy blow across her jaw, sending her crashing through several trees. Mizuki, with an unsettling gleam in his eyes, laughed cruelly and said, "Know your place, you lowly demon." He then turned to look at Ashley, sneering, "Your turn, you foolish panther." He was about to charge towards Ashley when suddenly, an overwhelming presence of power filled the air, causing the entire clearing, and even Konoha itself, to tremble. Mizuki, terrified, slowly turned his head and froze, his eyes wide with shock as he saw Naruko standing in the middle of the trees, her hair shadowing her face. Naruko, slowly lifting her hand, touched her bruised lip. Upon seeing her blood on her hand, an intense surge of anger flooded her body. She clenched her trembling hand and glared at Mizuki with unyielding determination. Naruko summoned her ki, and a brilliant teal aura enveloped her, shining brightly in the clearing. Her expression hardening, she snarled, "You insolent fool! You dare strike me, the princess of all scions!" Her voice filled with fury as she said, "I'll make you regret this." In the blink of an eye, Naruko vanished, and Mizuki was sent crashing through several trees. When Mizuki finally came to a halt, he was at least 10 miles from Konoha. Naruko appeared before him, her right hand pointed at the injured Mizuki. "This is the end for you, traitor. Double Sunday." Mizuki had no chance to defend himself as a powerful beam of purple energy struck the exact spot where he had been lying, causing a massive explosion. As the smoke cleared and debris settled, Iruka and Sasuke looked on in stunned silence, their eyes widening at the enormous crater that had formed in Mizuki's place. Naruko, snorting in frustration, lowered her hand. She relaxed her aura and regained control of her killing intent. Turning back, she reappeared in the clearing, where Sasuke was still frozen in fear. She coldly remarked, "I will leave your fate to the Hokage, Uchiha. He will decide your punishment." Naruko then floated over to Iruka, gently placing her fingers on his forehead. "As for you, Iruka, I'll ensure you get the care you need," she said softly. In the next instant, Iruka found himself in the emergency room of Konoha's hospital, still recovering from the shock. Naruko, having used her instant transmission, turned back to Ashley. "Let's go home, Ashley." Ashley, grinning, agreed and shot into the air, heading home. Naruko glanced at the forbidden scroll, briefly considering taking it since it technically belonged to her, but then decided it wasn't necessary. She turned away and blasted off to her home. Sasuke, still too terrified to move, finally realized he needed to flee. But before he could make a move, the Anbu appeared, surrounding him. "You're coming with us, Uchiha," one of them stated coldly. Sasuke groaned, realizing his fate was sealed. The next morning, Naruko stood in her bedroom, pondering what to wear for the day. She had her first team meeting, and she wanted to make a good impression, but she didn't want to wear the heavy Saiyan armor all day. She sighed, realizing her cousins and aunt might have made her a little vain. She looked at her bed, where Ashley was enjoying a golden rabbit she had caught. Naruko groaned again, still sore from the previous night's training session. It was hard to focus on getting dressed when all she wanted was to rest. After a moment of contemplation, Naruko decided to dress like Broly for the day, foregoing a shirt and instead sporting some flashy accessories. Fully dressed, Naruko walked outside, with Ashley happily trotting by her side. They were nearly at the academy when Naruko suddenly realized she had forgotten her sword, Excalibur. Rolling her eyes, she turned around and walked back home, grabbed her sword along with her kunai and shuriken, and made sure that the bruise Mizuki had left wasn't too noticeable. After checking the mirror one last time, Naruko groaned, realizing she was already an hour late. She turned to Ashley and said, "Come here, we're teleporting." Ashley chuckled and sat beside her. Naruko placed her fingers on her forehead and, with a smirk, said, "Smart-ass panther." In an instant, the two of them vanished, Naruko having used instant transmission to teleport them both to the academy. In conclusion, thank you so much for being a part of this amazing journey. Your support means the world to me. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with all things Anime Dreams. Until next time, take care and stay tuned for more exciting content. Thank you, and warm regards, Anime Dreams.